Next, from the Union League Club of Chicago, we talk with Tom Wolf, the Executive Director of the Energy Council at the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Wolf discusses the most important energy issues affecting society, future game changers for energy, and when the state can expect fracking to begin in southern Illinois. This runs about 35 minutes.
Tom Wolf, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
It's my pleasure to be here.
It's been a while since we had a chance to sit with you and talk about some of Illinois' energy issues. And, I don't know to what extent people realize what an important state Illinois is vis-a-vis energy. And in your role, you get a chance to keep your fingers on the pulse of energy developments, both from breakthrough technology as well as public policy. From the energy sources that are at play in Illinois, what are some of the major ones, and tell us about how diverse Illinois' energy pie is as compared to maybe some other places?
Well, Illinois is an amazing energy state. It's never boring. For electricity generation specifically, we get about 48% of our electricity from nuclear power in Illinois, which is the most of any state in the country. The national average is about 20% of electricity generation from nuclear. In our state's 48%. We have the most nuclear plants of any state in the country.
Second, how many are there, do you know?
There are 6 facilities and 11 reactors in Illinois, all owned by Exelon. The coal industry is the next in terms of electricity generation. They're at 43% in late 2013. That's where the numbers were. They're down about 5%. From about 2008, so it's a smaller amount than it was, but still very significant. And the next one is renewable, which is about 5% of our electricity generations from renewable, mostly wind, and 3% from natural gas. And again, how that's different is around the country, natural gas has become a significant producer of electricity. With the natural gas boom associated with hydraulic fracturing going on around the country, a lot of plants around the country are building natural gas to electricity plants. In Illinois, we're not doing that yet because we have so many nuclear plants and so many coal plants. There hasn't been the need for that base load development yet for natural gas electricity. But for wind, for example, at 5%, people might not think that's a lot, but that was 0% in 2003. So in 11 years, it's gone from 0 to 5%, which in the energy world is a huge revolution, and that should continue to grow with our renewable portfolio standard. And we're the number 4 wind producer in the country.
Exactly.
So Illinois is an energy hub nexus, much like we are in terms of the railroads. We have pipelines, we have transmission lines, we have refineries, 4 refineries, 5 with the Whiting in Northwest Indiana.
Number 4 in the nation for refining?
I don't even know that statistic, but it's got to be up there. We have 4 refineries in our state, and if you include the Whiting refinery just across the border in Northwest Indiana, there's just a lot of energy activity going on. Illinois is a great energy state.
When we talk about, a term we're going to use, and I want to remind people what it means. When we talk about baseload energy relative to electricity, what does baseload mean?
That means basically it's on. It's always on and it doesn't turn off. The other example is intermittent energy. So if you have a nuclear plant, a natural gas plant, or a coal plant, they run whenever you want them to run. And for nuclear plants, they never really shut off unless you move the fuel. Whereas wind and solar are only work when the sun shines, the wind blows. So that's the issue. But there are many issues with energy, but one of them with electricity, when it comes to wind power and solar power, is they're not always on. So that's intermittent energy versus baseload energy.
Yeah, so just going back over the numbers that you gave us, nuclear and coal in Illinois constitute 91% of our electrical generation.
Yep.
So when people say, why can't we just do wind and solar and these renewables, the answer is in part because they're not base loads of energy.
Right. The technology is not there yet to put solar and wind as our base load technology. It might be there someday. If you improve battery storage, and if you do that, that brings it up a lot closer. The technological advances going on with wind and solar are spectacular. Solar prices have come way down the last 5-10 years, especially the last couple. Wind technology has gotten much better. In fact, they're looking at some turbines that do some storage, energy storage. So that technology is getting a lot better, but ultimately, it's still a low percentage, and that's an evolution, not a revolution.
And again, just so people know, one of the problems with electrical, the lights that are burning in this room, that energy was generated like a second ago. So there's no long-term storage
Right.
of electrical energy. Is there any development going on from the Department of Energy, grants or anything, to try to find batteries that could actually store maybe solar panels on your roof so you could actually electrify your house at night?
Energy storage is the holy grail. If any of your viewers figure that out, they'll be richer than Bill Gates. So there's a lot of people looking at it, both in the private, public sector, and combined. Locally here in Illinois, the Argonne National Labs, which is outside Lamont, Illinois, not too far from Chicago, got a grant from the Department of Energy for a 5-year program to improve battery storage. Their plan is a 5-5-5 plan. It's one-fifth it's 1/5 the cost, 5 times the power, and I'm missing the other 5. I'll think about that in a minute, but it's like, should be easy to remember, and I forgot it. But basically, it was in 5 years. So it's 1/5 the power, 1/5 the cost, 5 times the power in 5 years. That's their goal. And if they achieve that, it won't be, again, the revolution, but it will be certainly a step in the evolution of trying to make batteries work for different types of energy.
Might actually be a revolution if we combine that with what's happening with Tesla motors, the electrical car. If that were had batteries that could extend, and you would be able to go maybe 400 miles or so on a charge.
It's just a fundamental difference between storing energy that runs a car and storing megawatts coming out of a nuclear plant or a solar plant or a wind farm. Again, you can do it, and every battery incremental change will help that, but storing megawatts of power is a different animal than storing power that is on a car.
I was going to, again, people think in terms of why can't we have the renewables, and if you want to just turn a reading lamp on, you can easily do that. But you can't run steel mills and those kind of things where
Right.
A modern industrial facility where you need that power and you need vast amounts of it.
Our Society for Electricity runs on a real-time basis, running on the need of the community. If we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, turn our light on, they want the light to go on. So the whole grid and the whole generation setup is set up so that happens. And with current technology, it cannot include alternative fuels, alternative electricity like wind and solar to a certain extent. Now, our renewable portfolio standard in Illinois is 25% renewable by 2025.
Is that going to be achieved?
I think they could get there, absolutely. There's incremental goals along the way. And remember, that's not just generation, that's where we purchase it. So we'll purchase energy from other states, other renewable facilities to reach that, along with growth in Illinois. And with 25%, the grid can run with that, but there comes a certain point where you need some base load or base load storage to make it work. And the technology is moving in that direction, but it can't happen tomorrow, but it could happen soon after.
Just as you gave us the breakdown of energy, nuclear,
Of electricity.
Nuclear and coal being the big dogs. Let's on these issues of electrical issue, or no, I'm sorry, energy issues rather. What are some of the? Let's weigh those. What are the major issues out there that we as a society should be paying attention to relative to energy? And then what are some of the minor ones so we can understand where our focus should be?
Well, the first one is what one your viewers can do themselves. I mean, your viewers, and we're not going to do nuclear power plants, we're not going to do hydraulic fracturing, we're not going to do coal plants, but we use energy. And the number one thing we all have to do is find ways to use energy more efficiently and conserve it. When all my energy companies who are part of my chamber council all agree that efficiency is an incredibly important issue. And when people who are selling you something and make money at selling you something tell you to use less of it, you should take the hint. So they see where prices are probably going to go, where technology is going, and
are we outstripping our ability to produce meet the electrical demand?
Not yet, no, and we might not, but ultimately it's about cost and efficiency. So as consumers, if we can use 10, 20, 30% less energy, which is good for, and that's the best new energy there is not to have to produce it at all, then you're saving money and you're actually helping the grid be a little cheaper, and you're helping avoid potential costs of developing new generation all at the same time. So ultimately, the number one thing for individuals in Illinois to think about is look at your electricity bill, look at your home or business, and try to find out through audits or other means what are the economic ways that I can lower that bill. So that's number one. The other ideas out there, or other issues going out there, which are more big picture ideas. One is on the electricity side is smart grid, which again involves.
And I want to get involved in
Yeah.
that a bit more, but let's go through what some of the major issues are, and then we can
That's
dig
fine.
deeper.
Smart grid is one. Hydraulic fracturing in Illinois will be coming up this year. We have a storage issue with pet coke and coal storage in Illinois. And we have NRG, a new player, new company, that just bought out the coal plants and wind farms from Midwest Generation. So those are kind of the issues, the big picture issues that are happening, in addition to increased distributed generation that's going on in terms of people putting solar on their homes. That's beginning to take off a little bit. So those are the kind of energy issues that are going on in Illinois. Fortunately, for crude oil purposes, with our refineries and everything, crude oil prices are a little bit stable. Who knows how long that's going to last? But they've been between $3.50 and $4.50 a gallon now, I think, for about a year. And barring, supply issues or wars in the Middle East, we expect that to continue. But again, I can't predict the future on that. So most of the issues we'll be dealing with are those, and less on crude oil.
People have heard maybe about the Keystone Pipeline. They sometimes may, because they don't hear about the other pipelines, think that the Keystone Pipeline would be something new. I mean, it would be a new pipeline, but pipelines are not new.
Illinois is the hub for pipelines, like it is for roads, like it is for railroads. So as reference, the Keystone Pipeline, proposed pipeline, which doesn't even get near Illinois, is 800,000 barrels a day.
Come into some of our refineries?
That is correct. The Keystone Pipeline gets to the Metro East area, and that's already built. But the Keystone XL pipeline, the one that's having trouble getting permitted, that's going to go from Canada right down to Texas. That's 800,000 barrels a day, which all the environmental community is fighting. It's been this big fight for the last 4 or 5 years now. In Illinois, right now, every day, we have more than 1 million barrels of Canadian oil underground every day. So there's more pipeline capacity in Illinois now than the Keystone Pipeline. So we've already got it, and it works well. I mean, there was a leak in Michigan, there was, leaks in Arkansas. I mean, there's no perfect system. And if you start using trains, that's not perfect either. But the pipeline system in Illinois is incredibly safe, well-maintained, well-regulated, and it's growing because more oil is coming from Canada, and there's people in Illinois and throughout the Midwest that want that oil.
And in fracking, as you say, and people may remember, we passed a fracking bill last year.
Yes.
Fracking, we're told, is not new, but it is the horizontal drilling that's really, I think, revolutionized. And we've seen it in both Western Pennsylvania and in the Dakotas.
Yeah, without going through all the details, none of the techniques that they're doing is new. The fact that they're doing it together, have a different recipe and kind of put it into one pot, that is new.
And what's happened? I mean, how has that revolutionized oil and gas?
That could be its own segment. I mean, the bottom line is North Dakota, the one example I've had, is North Dakota in 2006 was producing 40,000 barrels of oil a day, which is nothing. And today they're producing more than 1 million barrels of oil a day, oil. That's because of hydraulic fracturing of the shale in western North Dakota. So the unemployment in western North Dakota is 0%, basically. People are being paid $20 an hour at McDonald's. Now you're in western North Dakota, which is not one of the most pleasant places to live in our country, but there are a lot of jobs there, a lot of opportunities, and that growth is amazing. That's because of hydraulic fracturing. Western Pennsylvania, that shale has produced natural gas. Southern Texas has produced natural gas and oil. Colorado, the same. And because of that, we're basically turning from an oil importing country to basically a country that's looking at exporting not only natural gas, but potentially down the road oil. We used to, in 2008, we were importing 60% of our crude oil needs.
In 2008?
In 2008. Now we're importing only 40%. And according to the government, that could go down to like 25% of our needs by the end of this year. We're producing that much oil. And most of that oil comes from Canada. So now we're almost an energy independent country when it comes to crude oil because of what we're producing, what we're getting from Canada, and what we're getting from Mexico. We're getting to the point where we're almost energy independent.
At least with North America, let's say.
With North America, with NAFTA signees, with NAFTA countries.
And we're not going to be in a position to be held hostage by the Middle East as we were back in '73.
Right. But the key part of that is, I tell people to be realistic, is in a geopolitical sense, we still have allies who are reliant on Middle Eastern oil. And China's reliant on Middle Eastern oil. So yes, for supply purposes, it's important to be independent. But in geopolitical purposes, we're not taking away the aircraft carriers from the Persian Gulf. They're still going to be there because if something happens there, our allies are hit. And since the price of oil is an international price, we'd be hit anyway. We would pay more even if we had the oil.
Well, the more it impacts us all relative to supply and demand. The more
Right.
supply, well, we're not going to be paying $18 a gallon for gas.
Well, we'll have it. I mean, if things really got bad in the Middle East and we depended on them for all of our oil, that'd be terrible. Well, we'll be paying a higher price for it, but at least we'll have it.
We'll have it. Let's go back to the so-called smart grid. I mean, that's
Okay.
a term that people have heard about, but I don't think they really understand.
No one does.
Understand it? Or why do we
Well,
need it?
I
What's
tell-
wrong with the grid we have?
I tell two stories that help people understand smart grid because there's too many details to go into. But the two stories I tell is service and information. So in terms of service, people have all had their electricity go out at one shape or form, one time or another. So if you called ComEd you have to call ComEd or Ameren to tell them your electricity's out because they have no way of knowing because the meter in your home or business doesn't tell them it's off. You have to call them. Well, what if you're not home? You don't know what's off, so they don't know.
So if you're on a vacation in Europe, your
Yeah. And in a storm,
freezer's meat's rotting.
right. I mean, or in a storm, what's off, what's on, they don't know. So they get calls, they send out, troops into the field to fix things, but they don't know exactly where they are and how big it is and where it is exactly. So a smart
the
meter.
current grid is a blind grid.
It's a blind grid. So with a new smart meter, which everybody will have by 2018, if not a little sooner, you'll have a meter that basically is connected to the mothership. So then ComEd and Ameren will have rooms where they see all these green lights on, and as soon as the light turns red, they'll see that power's out, and they'll probably text you or email you or whatever you decide to sign up for, and they'll say your power's out, and they'll tell you why or how or what's the next thing that's happening. So they'll actually tell you what's going on versus you calling them. And obviously, if you have all the information on a board with where everything is, you have a better sense of sending out crews, diverting energy around that problem, so whatever disruptions happen don't take as long. And that smarter grid and that smarter infrastructure allows ComEd and Ameren to give better service. So that's the service example. So in terms, do you want to?
I was just going to say, maybe we could also address it. People are always suspicious that you're doing something just to drive the cost up and having some excuse to do it. But is it fair to say that the electric grid that we have in today's America wasn't ever created by design? It was kind of slapped together because we go back to Edison, who created his electric, not only the light bulb, but the generators to electrify an area of town. And so initially what we had was one city was lit and one city wasn't. Then they were lit, but it was a bunch of silos. And then when we, almost like stringing cables together, had electricity going, but it was a grid that we had wasn't designed to be interactive. And I think ultimately what I'm told, and I want you to address, we need to get that grid to where it's not just centered on one community, but actually can move and flow power where it's needed efficiently.
I mean, the grid is probably the most amazing single machine that's invented in the United States. I mean, it was slapped together, but it works. I mean, our lights turn on, and our electricity prices aren't that expensive, especially compared to a lot of other countries. And again, in other countries, they have a lot of brownouts and blackouts. That's just their normal business. Especially in second world countries, we don't have that issue. So yes, it is an old grid. It needs to be upgraded over time, and it has been. But now it's kind of going from analog to digital. Now it's time to take it to the next level. It's not, we don't believe, it's spending money to spend money. It's an infrastructure investment. It's taking a 2-lane road and making it an interstate. I mean, that is it's a huge development that we think, because of service issues and because of information issues, can help each individual user. So on the information issue, which a viewer should be thinking about, is when you have a smart meter in your home or business, you get much quicker access to information about how you're using your energy. Because right now you don't have that. You have a meter buried someplace in your house. Most people don't even know where it is. You have no idea how much energy you're using. You have no idea how much you're paying for it. And you don't find that out until you get the bill at the end of the month. With a smart meter, you can, if you choose, get synced up with that and have it on your app, an iPhone, a computer. Someone will sell you a device that can help read that, and you'll have basically real-time information or close to it about your energy use, so you can look at how you're using energy in your house and start figuring out how to use it better.
And you find out that old freezer in the garage that's been running you forgot about is eating up maybe a lot.
The story goes that 2 DVRs equals 1 new refrigerator. 2 DVRs uses the energy of 1 new Energy Star refrigerator. And people don't know that because it's always on and they don't think about it. But once you see that in real time or close to real time, people will help you, or you can do it yourself. Again, it's it's a free market. Will help you have devices and ideas and how to basically make sure that every kilowatt you use is the kilowatt you need, versus now where you just kind of flip the lights on and off and have appliances without really knowing why your bill's that expensive. So with those 2 items, service and information, you get a much better sense of why I'm really excited about smart grid and that development.
Where does it stand in being developed? I mean, when would we actually? Well, you mentioned
it's already out. I mean, basically, so the infrastructure part, the service part, without the meter, just the better transformers and stuff, we don't see, but they are being done right now, station by station. And it takes Combat and Ameren time to get through that. Smart meters, again, Combat has 4 million meters out there. They have to replace them. You can't do that in a month. They have a 6-year program. I think they've got it down to like 5 years now, maybe. And there's like 180,000 or close to that smart meters out there now, and they're putting more and more out every year. So it's a slow start with a ramp up. So, and I think the last time I heard from ComEd, they want to get done by 2018, have 4 million smart meters. So everybody will have one by 2018. And that's the goal, that's the plan.
What are some of the exciting, you were saying you were just excited about the smart grid, and we talked about maybe battery improvement. Are there any other interesting, just like LED lights came along, and all of a sudden they put out more light at a fraction of the energy usage.
And then we use more of them. So whatever.
Are there other interesting things in development that you look at and go, boy, this could be a game changer?
There's a lot of activity out there. That's why it's so much fun to be in the energy business. And it's not just new technologies, it's new ways to do what people consider old technologies. So, coal plants are getting, more efficient. Nuclear plants are more efficient. Again, people don't see that very often, the smart grid. But one thing people should be thinking about is what I call distributed generation. The idea that you put solar or potentially wind on your house or business, and you generate a percentage of your own electricity. It's taking off a little bit more rapidly in states where electricity prices are a little higher. Massachusetts in the Northeast, California in the West. Our sun is pretty good here, actually. We get pretty decent sun and electricity from solar panels, but because our electricity prices are so cheap and solar is at still such a cost, the return is 7 to 10 years depending on how you're doing it. Well, that's my understanding anyway. So, but electricity prices will go up at some point, and solar prices I think will continue to drop. And they'll get better technologies, so you as a homeowner or a business, first it'll be the Walmarts and Walgreens that'll put solar on their roofs, and eventually it might be condos and apartment buildings. But ultimately that opportunity is something people should start to think about. do I want to produce part of my own energy? What does that mean? Even if I don't have batteries, can I produce 10% of my own energy and not have to pay ComEd for that money?
Is there a, Moore's Law, they talk about how they kept, doubling the amount of information that a computer chip could do every, I forget how many years. Is there a corresponding improvement or anything like an improvement on solar so that the same 3x5 panel might produce twice as much energy today than it did 30 years ago?
It's not the same law, but it's the same concept. They have come down in price. The technology has gotten better, but you still have the law of physics. And from what I don't design solar panels, but from what the people who do tell me is that they get better and better, but it's not going to be like, I think it's double the power every whatever year, like Moore's Law was for technology. But you don't need that. You can get incremental improvements on solar and still make them more and more valuable. I mean, I was in Turkey at an energy conference that I got to go to, and there's people who have solar panels on their roof next to a water tank. That's how they heat their water. And the same thing in the West Bank in Israel, and even in Israel. So if the cost is right, it's already workable. Solar already works if the cost is right. But our electricity is so cheap here in Illinois that it's not quite there yet, but I think it will be.
Another thing that I had heard years ago, and I thought, well, that would be, speaking of things that work, but the cost point wasn't right. And I don't know if you've ever looked at fuel cells, which the Apollo, 40-something years ago was using fuel cells on Apollo missions. Just recently, I think it was Walmart, or I may have the company wrong, started using fuel cells on their forklifts, and it caused the fuel cell stocks to explode in price from like $2 to $7 or something. Do you follow that, and to what extent? And fuel cells actually, for the viewers, basically just operate on hydrogen. This glass of water is,
That's
H2O.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not an expert on how to use hydrogen to make energy. There's a lot of people looking at that. Fuel cells work on that type of technology. A lot of companies, private, public, and private-public partnerships are looking at that. I think there was a West Coast company called Bloombox, was one that was on 60 Minutes about 2 years ago, and even they said they were like 10 years away from a market, but people were testing it. Again, fuel cells is like battery storage. If you find the paradigm, solve the paradigm to make it work economically, in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of temperature, in all kinds of humidity, you'll be a very rich person and we'll be much better off as a country. They just haven't figured that out yet. They have figured it out for some uses, I'm sure, like forklifts and stuff like that. But how we use energy and how it's generated. We use, in this battery here, we want this to work when it's 16 below in Chicago and it's 100 degrees in Chicago. And for the most part, it does. You need fuel cells to work the same way, and they just haven't gotten there yet. But that doesn't mean they won't. They just haven't gotten there yet.
What a number of years ago, people may remember, we deregulated electric markets here, and the first people to be able to buy it, before, I guess you just kind of were almost like assigned who you got your electricity from. Now a factory in, I suppose, southern Illinois, which is in the Ameren service area, could actually buy electricity from ComEd, right?
Well, yeah, it's very confusing to the people because we never had to do this before. It's like...
Well, the point I was going to go to, they started off the commercial, now homeowners can buy electricity on the market. So where are we on that spectrum? Because we haven't touched base on that.
The best way to describe it is people used to have to get their phone from Ma Bell back in the 80s. I'm that old, where you had three choices.
There was only one company.
That was it. You had three phones: beige, black, and white. And if you got a touch tone, you were happy. It took 2 weeks to get the phone. Well, again, this is a prop. That doesn't happen anymore. Electricity is going in the same direction in terms of having that choice. ComEd and Ameren will always be the deliverer of energy. They own the grid. They maintain the grid. So I call them the FedEx of energy without any competition. They just deliver it. People are buying their electricity from different companies that are on the market buying and selling energy on the market and using hedges to make your electricity price cheaper. Not the delivery price, but the electricity price. Illinois went to a competitive marketplace to give people the freedom to do that, and grown tremendously in the past 5 years. In the past 2 years, even more so, because now with aggregation, where municipalities take all their individual homeowners and small businesses, put them in a package for an alternative retail electricity supplier, and they'll give you a better deal. So now 80% of the power bought in Illinois is not bought through a ComEd or Ameren, or through the Illinois Power Agency that does that. It's bought by companies, private companies. So we are a competitive state. Most of us get our energy from competitive sources, whether we know it or not. And we're generally better off for that because our electricity prices before competitive marketplace started was the highest in the Midwest. There used to be billboards in Wisconsin telling companies not to go to Wisconsin because our electricity prices were so high. And now our electricity prices are lowest in the Midwest. And other states are looking at us to say, is there a way they can copy what we've done? Because our electricity prices compared to the region and other parts of the country are really low. And one of those reasons is because we have a competitive marketplace for the companies that buy the power.
So when we hear so much about things going wrong in public policy in Illinois, that was one of the big successes?
It was one of the big successes. I have one member who says it's the only good thing the legislature's done in the past 15 years, but that's just one person's opinion. That's not mine.
And so today, how much of a savings if a homeowner goes out and calls up one of these companies that sells electricity, what kind of savings might they find?
Well, up until about a year ago, the savings could have been up to like 20–30%, because the way that the incumbent utilities got power from the Power Association, a government entity, they had long-term contracts that were on the high end. Now those contracts are off, so everybody's pretty close. If you just stay on ComEd, it's pretty close to what you can get in the market. But that's going to change because ComEd's got to go out in the market again, and prices have gone up. So what I say to people is, who do you trust? Do you trust a government agency working with utilities to buy your power, or do you trust a company who has competition, whose job it is to make sure you get the lowest price to keep you as a customer, finding you the best price for electricity? And I always think it's the latter versus the former. And to be clear to your viewers, ComEd or Ameren don't care. They don't make money on the purchase of electricity. They make money on the distribution.
As I said, they're kind of like the toll road, right?
Right.
They don't care where you're going, what car you're driving, just give us a quarter and
Yep.
you can go on our highway.
And they maintain the highway. So if you go to a competitive electricity supplier, ComEd or Ameren doesn't care. They'll still take care of it. They're still going to treat you the same way if there's an outage. You're their customer in terms of delivery. What they're delivering is up to you.
Before we end this conversation, let's go back to the fracking. It was passed last year.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about how amazing it's increased oil and gas in the United States. But where are we right now in Illinois as far as actually getting the process going and extracting oil and gas from southern Illinois?
Yeah, it's got a little bit of work left to do. The law passed last May of 2013. The governor signed it. The Department of Natural Resources then has to do rules on how the permitting works and goes into more of the detail of how that permitting would be accepted. They're still going through that. They had a first draft out that got 36,000 comments.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people in Illinois who have angst, I guess is the best word to put it, about hydraulic fracturing. We at the Chamber and many other business groups look at other states and we see it being done safely. We see how it helps bring product to market, which we need, and we think it can, at the end of the day, create economic opportunity in the southern part of the state. Other folks haven't been convinced of that yet. But it is going to happen. So the second draft of the rule will come out. It will have to get approved by a subgroup of the Illinois legislature. And we're hoping by the summer or early fall that will be done. Hopefully the summer. And then some companies will try to get permits. And that'll take about 60 days to get that done. So we'll be hoping by the end of the year, if not a little sooner, there'll be companies doing hydraulic fracturing under Illinois to see what comes out of the shale. And we don't know what's going to come out. It's going to be oil or gas or nothing, or not enough of it to make it economically viable. We're obviously hopeful that it's the best product, which the most expensive product is oil, and that Illinois has amazing opportunities if it is oil to get it to market. But if it's gas, because we're part of a huge pipeline infrastructure, we have a great opportunity to get the gas to market too. And we think that could create some fantastic job opportunities in an area of the state that could certainly use it. And so we're looking forward to seeing if the shale play cooperates or not.
And so you think about what time frame when maybe it might start?
We hope that, June for the permitting process to be set up, maybe July, and then 60 days, it's 60 days per permit. So we're hoping by the third or fourth quarter that the companies will be drilling in southern Illinois to see what comes out. And no one knows. We know it's there, but we don't know if it comes out economically or not, because there are costs with drilling.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.